In mid-June, the United States and Iran signed a memorandum of understanding, signaling a public intent to hold negotiations and officially end their long-standing hostilities. Yet that diplomatic progress is difficult to find on the ground. The talks have repeatedly stalled, while both nations continue to trade military blows across the region. The disconnect between public statements and private actions was highlighted by the Wall Street Journal, which reported that President Trump has been holding secret meetings with top military officials. These conversations reportedly focus on abandoning negotiations to resume full-scale attacks, a move described by some officials as finishing the job. This raises a difficult question. If the objective is a peace deal, why is the U.S. military actively drawing up plans for an all-out strike? These parallel tracks suggest that the negotiations are serving as a tactical screen, allowing Washington to maintain its military options while keeping the public focused on the bargaining table. A primary driver for this strategy is the U.S. Strategic Petroleum Reserve, or SPR. These industrial storage facilities represent the physical energy lifeline for the American economy and the military's operational capacity. That reserve is currently in a state of crisis. Due to the energy shocks of the pandemic and the ongoing proxy war in Ukraine, the SPR has dropped to roughly 326 million barrels, the lowest level the U.S. has seen since 1983. Vice President J.D. Vance addressed this vulnerability directly in a late June interview. He provided a rare look at the administration's true priorities regarding the ongoing talks with Iran. Vance explained that the administration is using the negotiations to buy time. The goal is to stabilize the global oil market, just long enough to refill domestic reserves and prepare for the possibility that the conflict never actually ends. In this context, diplomacy is a tool used to refuel the national energy supply before a potential return to open warfare. This use of a diplomatic process to mask military preparation is an established geopolitical tactic. The precedent for this maneuver can be found in the 2014 and 2015 Minsk agreements, which were brokered to pause the conflict between Russia and Ukraine. Years later, former German Chancellor Angela Merkel and former French President François Hollande admitted the agreements were never a path to peace. Instead, Merkel noted they were intended to give Ukraine priceless time to militarize and prepare for a future phase of the war. Washington is now attempting to apply this same strategy of manufactured delay to the current crisis in the Middle East. This map shows the Strait of Hormuz, a narrow 21-mile choke point that serves as the primary artery for 20% of the world's daily oil supply. Iran is already moving to counter Washington's delay tactics by asserting physical control over the strait. They have forced oil tankers to abandon their usual routes off the coast of Oman, moving them into Iranian-controlled waters, where they now collect transit fees from U.S. allied nations. By dictating the flow of oil through this passage, Tehran is directly undermining the U.S.'s ability to refill its strategic reserves. Every tanker delayed or diverted slows the American effort to rebuild its energy security. The U.S. strategy of buying time requires a passive opponent. Instead, Tehran has seized the physical valve that controls the stability of the American economy. The recent conflict has accelerated a shift within Iran's political and military structure, bringing a new generation of leaders to power. This shift marks a departure from the previous generation's doctrine of strategic patience. That approach was defined by extreme caution, intended to avoid any action that might trigger an all-out war with the United States. The current leadership has abandoned that restraint. They have demonstrated a willingness to escalate by launching direct attacks that heavily damaged critical infrastructure, including the headquarters of the U.S. Navy's Fifth Fleet and the Naval Forces Central Command. Iranian state media is now openly discussing the admissions made by Trump and Vance, proving that Tehran is fully aware of the Minsk-style delay tactic being used against them. Washington's attempt to force a collapse of the old guard has resulted in a bolder regime that is far more willing to engage in direct military confrontation. Tehran's control over the Strait of Hormuz provides a level of leverage that serves as a massive deterrent against Western aggression. If the U.S. breaks off negotiations to launch a surprise strike, Iran is prepared to retaliate by closing the strait entirely. President Trump has acknowledged the stakes of this move, noting that a total closure would leave the world with only about 4 weeks of oil reserves remaining. The depletion of those reserves would trigger a global economic crisis. Without a steady supply of oil, the core infrastructure of the modern world, from shipping to power generation, would begin to fail. The decision to use diplomacy as a tool for managing the oil market has linked global stability to a single geographic choke point, one that is now firmly under Iranian control.